1. Preface. This happened at my cabin in the US. I'm female, and I was 11 when all of this took place. My cousin Natalie, age 14 at the time, was also involved. We were all at my cabin for the weekend. We equals my mom, my aunt and uncle, my cousin Natalie, and of course me. It was a gorgeous summer day, probably around 80 degrees, warm and humid enough to want to hang out in the lake to cool off. We have a jet ski at my lake, and Natalie and I thought it would be a fun idea to take it out, stop it in the middle of the lake, and take a quick swim before returning. So Natalie and I change into our swimsuits. Natalie changed into her tankini, and I had on a regular bikini. I remember we were both just super fucking happy that day, and we were basically bouncing when we walked out to my dock, where the jet ski was tied up. We get on the dock, put on our life jackets, and hop in the water. Natalie gets on the jet ski, and I push her out, and then jump on, and she starts it up. So we got to the middle of the lake, and made sure there was no seaweed in sight because gross. And Natalie shut off the jet ski, and we jumped in, and were swimming around, floating, just relaxing. We were getting bored, so we decided to head back. We get back on the jet ski, and start driving to my dock. We get to the dock, tie up the jet ski, and lay out on the dock to tan. We eventually get bored of that as well, and start walking to my cabin, probably for food or something. That's when Natalie saw it. Rather, him, not it. Natalie nudged me and looked in his direction, and I caught on to what she was looking at. The friendly, polite neighbor, who has owned a cabin next to ours for as long as I could remember, was standing right up against his bay window, completely butt naked, staring at us, giving us a super creepy "I see you as mate" type of menacing grin, stroking his tic-tac of a dick. Now, the window wanker was about 6 feet tall, pale as a ghost, and as skinny as a beanpole. He didn't look threatening by any means, but the fact that he was standing there for God knows how long, before we noticed him, probably getting off on watching us lay in our swimsuits, sent chills up my spine, despite how hot the temp was. We run inside. Literally, fucking book it. My mom, aunt, and uncle are sitting in the kitchen just laughing, having a drink, enjoying each other's company. We run in and we just look at them. Probably we looked freaked out as heck. And I remember my aunt looked at us like, "What the fuck?" And then she asked what happened. And my mom and uncle were staying silent, awaiting our answer. Natalie told them everything. They, all three, become mutually concerned and upset and mad. There were so many mixed feelings going around, but we all agreed it was not okay for him to be doing that. My mom, aunt, and uncle all immediately decided the cops needed to be called and informed of what had just happened. Natalie, being pretty ballsy as she tends to still be, remembered she left her phone out on the dock and went out alone. She kind of slipped out. I don't think any of us would have let her go out alone if we knew. And before you know it, she came back into the kitchen, phone in hand, silent, and said, "It just happened again." We all knew what she meant. She explained he was back at it again, in the same spot, naked, making intense eye contact with her while beating off. Now, at this point, my uncle had already dialed 911, and where my cabin is located, it would take a cop a good 30 to 45 minutes to arrive. Finally, the cop shows up, knocks, and we talk to him. Mainly Natalie and I, since we were directly involved. He just listens and silently nods, and then tells us he is going to walk over there alone and have a chat with him. So we wait anxiously, and after what seemed like an hour, the cop comes back, knocks, whatever. And we let him in, and he tells us he confronted Window Wanker, and that he denied staring at us, but did not deny jerking off. He said it was his right to do what he wanted in his cabin, that he was an exhibitionist and liked being nude in his cabin. And the cop said, "You know those girls are underage, right? You do understand the severity of that, right?" And I guess the cop said he just shrugged it off and changed subjects. Keep in mind, we used to be super friendly with Window Wanker before the incident. Always waved to him, chatted with him when he was outside around the same time as us, just usual friendly neighbor stuff. Also, he had a wife, kids, etc. His wife was probably in town or away while he was doing his exhibitionist shit or whatever he thought it to be. Epilogue. After that, nothing else happened with him. We didn't see him jerking off again and never saw his tic-tac again. We did, although, see him around his cabin doing yard work, fishing, etc. The cop directly told us that he had filed a report but could not press charges because there was not enough evidence. Window Wanker never apologized to us, never talked to us again, but he would still stare and give us that menacing grin, like he did the day he was staring at us while going to town on himself. No idea if his wife, kids ever found out. I hope so. And 3 months after the incident, he sold his cabin to another man. And that man is insanely friendly. He has a super sweet wife and 2 very cute black labs who get along great with my dog. So it ended up working out all right. But, Window Wanker, I hope I never see you again. If I do, I might kick you in your nads. 2. I'm a Brazilian guy, 20 years old today, but around 12 when this story happened. Just a normal school day, boring subjects, annoying people, you know, the usual. I come from a good family with somewhat good financial situation, so at the time I had with me not only a Motorola V3 cell phone, which was like top tier back at the time, also uncommon for kids to have one. Every day after school it would take a while for my father to pick me up with his car, which used to be a silver Mervera. It was also the same car that he used to drive me to school with. That being said, one day I was waiting for my dad to pick me up, and I did so by playing some New Super Mario Bros. On my DS, which I of course took to school. That's when my cell phone rang, and I heard the voice of a somewhat cheery man saying, "Hey Pete, it's your Uncle Paul. I'm here to pick you up for your dad. Come outside." The man said, and I simply answered with, "Okay," and left through the gate. The thing is, it was still early, way earlier than my dad usually picks me up. When I thought about that, I went back inside and waited for another call. And it came fast. "Where are you?" the man asked. I replied with, "Yeah, I don't see you." And he sighed on the other side, giving me instructions. "I'm with the same blue Corolla that I dropped you today in the morning, Pete. Come on," he said, and hung up. He was getting impatient. My 12-year-old brain processed what was happening and connected the dots. The thing is, I had no uncles with a name that started with P. They were all A's. Also, couldn't be my mom's brother because he's been dead for a long time now. Last thing was that no one called me Pete, an American nickname, but my family, those being my brother, sister, and my parents. I started to get nervous and talked to my friends about it. After all, some of them were still there. Basically, all they said was, "Yeah, tell him to go fuck himself." Now, I'm not one that likes to cuss, so I went to the principal for help. On my way there, the man calls again and I pick up. This time he was angry. "Why the fuck are you taking so long, you son of a bitch?" "Blue Corolla, are you brain dead? Get out here with that stupid video game of yours." And he hung up. I instantly froze. Thoughts rushed through my head such as, "They're trying to kidnap me. Is this real?" and so on. I started running to the principal's office. I was getting nervous and I called my dad, which answered in a hurry. I took a deep breath, not to seem scared. "Dad, did you by any chance send someone named Paul here to pick me up?" I asked, my heart pounding to hear what I wanted, and that's what I got. "No, whoever is calling you, do not go outside. I'll be right there," he said and hung up. I went inside the office, bursting in tears, asking for someone to get the man that was probably out there waiting for me in a blue Corolla. I gave the teacher and the principal the number he was calling me from, and they called to no avail. So they decided to go outside and check the blue Corolla by themselves. I stayed in the office, and I got another call. This time I picked it up, and my hands were shaking. But I knew he couldn't harm me. "What's taking you so long, you little shit?" he screamed. "Listen, I know you are no uncle of mine. You have no idea of which car I come to school in, and you are trying to kidnap me for whatever reason." "I'm not going outside," I screamed. "Again," he said quietly. I screamed a "what?" and called him sick and crazy, and he said, "You are not coming out again. You've been out. You just know better. Fuck you." He screamed before laughing like a maniac and hanging up. I held my phone in my hands and stared at nothingness for a while, until teacher and the principal came back saying that there was no such thing as a blue Corolla outside. Shortly after, my dad arrived, and I was escorted to a taxi with him and the guards. I sat there and did nothing as my dad talked on the phone to track the number that has been calling and find someone by the name of Paul. I took the rest of the week off school, and eventually I'd have nightmares about being outside school and being grabbed. After this happened, I went back to school the next week and instantly joined the Kendo Club in order to know something about self-defense, especially if I got the chance to be armed with something. Years later, my mom and dad divorced. Saw that coming, though. After all, when this episode happened, I was living with my older brothers because they didn't want to involve me in their fights. However, once I came back home with my mom, I found out that they divorced because my father had around 5 lovers in 5 different places. And one even called my mom saying, "You won. I've tried everything to keep him from me, but you won." Or at least that's what my mother says. I wonder, could all this kidnap story be part of a scheme from one of these lovers to steal my dad from us? If it was, then that just makes me uncomfortable to know that a human being is capable of probably killing a kid for whatever they want. Good thing is that today I'm 20, a teacher, and regional champion of Kendo, and I have never heard of Paul ever again. But I still wonder what would have happened to me if I didn't have the decency to go back inside and kept looking for him. So, Uncle Paul, let's not meet. 3. English is not my first language, so expect language errors. So a few years ago I was studying on a university in a major city. Normally I am living in a small town, more than 70 kilometers from it. So as you might imagine, I had to rent a room. I found one in a 4-story building. Most of it was rented by various students. The flat I was supposed to live in looked like this. Behind the front door there were 5 to 6 meters long corridor, very narrow one. On the right there were 2 doors. Behind the first one there was a room where my roommate was supposed to live, then a kitchen, practically combined with a bathroom, which wasn't really hygiene positive, but, well, old building. On the end of the corridor there was a big room that I was going to live in. For a year or so, it was really great. My roommate was a female student that was rather nice. She even cooked things occasionally, which was a life-saving thing considering the fact that if I were to do this, I would probably burn water black. But then she got pregnant with her boyfriend and had to say goodbye to studying. Here enters my second roommate. In fact, even after living with him for nearly half a year and all that happened then, I don't even remember his name. Really. That should tell you all you need about our relationship. He was a 20 to 22-year-old student, whose face I don't even remember too. I've saw him maybe twice, for he was working, studying when I was in the flat and vice versa. So time passes, and we are ignoring each other. Everything is rather fine. Then things start to happen. The first warning was a call from the landlord. He is a tad bit ugly old man, especially his teeth look terrible, either missing or dark yellow. But I can't say anything wrong about him as a landlord. Once I accidentally paid him too much, and he quickly returned the surplus, so yeah, he was an honest guy. He had several flats in the city that he was renting to the students. He said to me that he would like me to watch over my roommate to see if something is wrong with him. Something happened in his workplace. I think he hit someone, and he was talking gibberish about that when he met the landlord about money. We paid him not through a bank account, but hand to hand. He visited us once a month for that. So later that day I returned to the flat, and what did I see? A kitchen cupboard is broken. It looked like an elephant sat on it. And the remains were spread over practically the entire room. Roommate is going in circles, looking like he is trying to clean the place. I ask him what happened, and he answers something about a party ended up wrong. So right now I should probably say why I haven't left the place straight away. I'm kinda a sheltered kid, living in a small town in a not so big and rather peaceful European country. I am a student, and in all my life I haven't even seen marijuana. I never witnessed any crime. For me it was, well, he acts strangely, but hey, maybe he's had a bad day. I went to bed, or rather a mattress, for I slept only on it. It wasn't easy to go to sleep because he was making noises in the kitchen. I even went there to ask him to be silent. He was so surprised by me speaking that he literally jumped. He said something alongside, "Sure, okay." And then it was a tad bit less noisy. The fact that the kitchen was still a mess, even though he was there all the time, should be a second warning, but once again, I didn't connect the dots. I only barricaded the door just in case, by pushing a table that stood next to them, so that the edge of them should prevent the door from opening. Also, he had his right foot in a bucket. No idea why. I was brutally awoken around 4 a.m. by him screaming that I have to open the door right now. His voice was angry, not scared, so I doubted there was a fire or something, so I loudly refused. Then he opened the doors by kicking them. The table with a computer on it was pushed back from the impact. The big part of the jam broke off too. He entered my room and started screaming something incoherently, that he knows what I am planning. He didn't attack me. He was just screaming. He also broke a ceiling lamp with my favorite cup that lay on the table next to the computer. I, on the verge of panic, sent a text message to my father, who was regrettably more than 70 kilometers from me, about what is happening. He tried to call the police, but for some dumb reason, in this country they can only act if a direct witness or victim is calling them. So there was no help from them, which was a completely retarded thing. Seriously. The next half hour was strange. My roommate kept screaming things incoherently. I think he somehow believed that I am after his life, and continued to demolish the flat. I was still on my mattress, unable to move because he was blocking the way out. He nearly assaulted me when he saw my gloves. It was right after winter, which, as he decided, were proof that I am a hitman, as I won't leave fingerprints if I kill him while wearing them. He was maybe a half-meter from me, while charging at me, when he suddenly jumped back screaming that he won't let me kill him that way. This routine was replayed several times. Several times he entered my room to scream something incoherently, only to leave quickly. In the end, I managed to get out by persuading him, the hardest persuasion skill test in my life, that if I leave the house without taking the keys, then he will be safe. You can imagine how I felt moving through that corridor and unlocking the door, with him being in the kitchen behind me, which was full of knives. In the end, I, however, managed to flee, wearing only pajamas and with a phone in my hand. I took refuge in another apartment in the same building in which a relative of the landlord was living with 2 other persons. I knew him because once the landlord couldn't collect the rent in person and asked me to give the money to him. They were even kind enough to make me a tea. I stayed there until the police came, then returned to the room. The roommate opened the door. While I was packing everything that was valuable, mainly computer and books, he was in the kitchen. Policemen tried to interrogate him, but rather unsuccessful. He wasn't really responsive, but he looked like his attack is over. They left him there, after telling him to go for a walk to cool his head. I, in the same time, left the flat. I waited for an hour in a safe distance from this place. My father picked me up, and we drove back to my town. A few hours later, my landlord, called by me after I left the flat, came there. The roommate was still there, and once again he ended up having some sort of mental breakdown. Landlord called the police once again, as the fella barricaded himself on the balcony, threatening to throw things on people if he wasn't left alone. This time the police came in force and practically dragged him out of the building. Now the thing is that I don't know exactly what happened to him after that. Ever since the incident, I heard 2 versions. First was it some sort of instantaneous insanity, schizophrenia, a paranoid one I mean. I later learned on that he was ripping cables from the walls as he was searching for a government-made wiretapping. The second was that he took some drugs and then mixed them with alcohol and somehow overdid it. The police searched through the room and found nothing. I doubt that I will ever again be able to have a roommate. Hey everyone, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 3 True Scary Stories, episode 129. Now I will just again point out, if I could, while yes, the name of the channel is Hellfreezer, there is also a copycat channel out there using my name. Please do check that my subscriber count is visible, currently over 22,000, and I'm very grateful to that, so thank you everyone who's gotten me that far. The fake channel will not have a subscriber count anywhere near that, and I believe it is currently hidden. Also, I do not disable comments on my videos. Many of the comments on the fake videos are removed or disabled entirely. There are many more ways, but I don't want to ramble on about this. Okay, back to my casual voice. That's enough of Mr. Announcer. Now, like I said, many new subscribers recently, so thank you very much to all my new subscribers. Also, thank you to those who have allowed me to use their stories in this and any other video where I have recently forgotten to mention it. Now where are we? Let me think. Right, I've decided I am going to do something for Halloween. I think I might have mentioned it briefly before. I'm not 100% certain of what it is, but there are a number of subreddits I can go through and hopefully get enough stories to do something. It may not necessarily be Halloween themed, but it will certainly be spooky, or spoopy if spooky's too much for you. I've also found myself suddenly tempted by the idea of trying to find killer clown stories or creepy clown stories. I saw one the other day on Reddit and I thought this was such a good time to do that sort of thing because it's very much in the news right now. There have certainly been stories of creepy clowns for quite a while, but it seems on the rise, and they're going from just weird and relatively harmless to, well, being actually creepy. I mean, the poor real professional clowns, it's starting to affect their work. So I'm not really sure where that'll go, but I'm certainly going to look into it because it might be fun. Okay, and with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.